Now we're going to start top of page 90. The next few pages are going to show us in great detail how we go about working with a newcomer. Before we get into this, a little bit of history would be helpful, so we'll know what it is we're reading. Now remember that this was written in 1939 or early 1940. And today it is as valid as the day it was written, and it has never changed, and it is exactly the way we need to go about working with a newcomer today. The history is quite simple. First of all, it was clear right from the beginning that one alcoholic working with another was the key to this whole program. Not mass action, not ganging up on somebody. One alcoholic working with another. As Ebby had worked with Bill, as Bill worked with Dr. Bob, as Dr. Bob worked with Bill D, and on, and that's where it all started. Now when Bill Wilson came out of the hospital for the last time, he'd made up his mind that he was going to go out there and carry this message. He was inspired to believe that that's what he must do. And he came to believe something which is as true today as that day in late 1934 when it came to Bill. That if he failed to enlarge and perfect his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he couldn't survive. It was true then, it's true today. So he went out and tried to do it, and for 6 months he fell on his sword. He was useless. He was not able to communicate. He could not communicate at depth. He was violating the very principle that Dr. Silkworth talks about in his opinion, that frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices, that the message that these alcoholic people will be interested in must have depth and weight. And Bill wanted everybody to follow in his footsteps and have their epiphany. He wanted them to have their bright light experience, and he was fond of talking about that. You must be an alcoholic. On your knees, sucker, and start praying. That didn't work very well, did it? He didn't understand that he was going to have to do a whole lot more than that. And so in desperation he went to Dr. Silkworth and he said, "Doc, what's going on here? It's been 6 months and nobody's gotten sober." And Silkworth said, "Well, I'm glad you asked, because I've been waiting to tell you what I know you must do. I've been doing this with drunks for 20 years, and I'll tell you what's going to work. Listen carefully, Bill. First you have to tell them how you drank and what happened to you when you drank and how you tried to stop and how you couldn't stop. You got to tell them about that powerlessness, and when they're still interested because they now know you know what you're talking about, then you tell them about the disease and you hit them over the head with it. Use it as a sledgehammer. If they're still interested, then you tell them how you recovered, and you make sure that you stress the spiritual freely, because that's where it all is." Remember the last word in Dr. Silkworth's opinion? Anybody remember what that word is? Yeah. Pray. Maybe you come to scoff, he says, but hopefully you'll stay to pray. Because he learned. He learned that that was what was happening in his very hospital, right under his nose. So Bill learned from that, and when he went to Akron and he finally ended up meeting Dr. Bob, he did what Silkworth had told him to do. And Bob listened to him, and later reported, he said, "He was the first man who ever talked to me about alcoholism and knew what he was talking about." So I had to listen. So you see, what happened was that Bill had established his credibility, his bona fides. He wasn't some moralizer. He wasn't somebody with a big something to sell. He was a guy who had been there before. The alcoholic died, went to heaven, St. Peter he did tell. "You'll have to let me in, Pete. I have already been to hell." And it was this very thing that enabled Bill to be able to get through Dr. Bob's denial and his sense of hopelessness. That Bill knew what he was talking about, and Dr. Bob knew it because he identified himself. And that's so essential now to breaking through for the new people. That's why we tell them to read the whole book, because the book helps them do that.